From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. We begin in Colombia, where former FARC leader Jesus Santrich has been arrested for drug trafficking at the request of the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration. The move is likely to affect the security of the peace accord between the FARC and the Colombian government. Let's take a look at who Santrich is to understand why. He's the principal negotiator and signatory of the Havana Peace Accord. He held a 25-day hunger strike in 2017 to protest against the government's failure to release prisoners. He fought for amnesty and pardons for FARC members. He's a lower house member representing the FARC, and he sits on the committee for the follow-up, impulse, and verification of the implementation of the peace agreement. Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos gave a press conference alongside the nation's prosecutor shortly after the news broke on Monday evening.
The accord is very clear. He who commits a crime after the signing of the final agreement will be subject to prosecution under regular jurisdiction for new crimes committed. The General Prosecutor of the nation has informed me of the results of rigorous investigations. There is concrete and conclusive evidence that prove that Ceusis Hernandez, known as Jesus Santrich, has committed the crime of drug trafficking following the signing of the agreement.
Shortly after his arrest, the defense attorney for Jesus Santrich spoke to the media and announced that the FARC leader would immediately begin a hunger strike.
Today at 5 o'clock in the evening, Jesus Santrich, a peace negotiator for the FARC-EP, was captured by the CTE. He was captured on order of a New York tribunal. He himself said he saw something of this nature coming for some time. To the FARC and all the people, do not be discouraged. He has high moral because he knew that something like this would come. To the Colombian people, as of today, this is a failed peace process. The FARC best prepare themselves for what's next. Beginning today, Jesus Santrich is entering into a hunger strike, and we make a call to all political prisoners of the FARC who are still incarcerated to unite in dignity for liberty for the political prisoners.
The lawyer of former Brazilian President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, Cristiano Sanim, said in an exclusive interview with teleSUR that the sentence against the leader aims to end with his political career. Sanim described the legal process as judicial warfare against the former president.
What is happening here in Brazil, especially with President Lula, is sadly something that is happening all over Latin America. Political leaders are being accused without any proof and with clear political motives. This is what has happened to President Lula. He is a victim of lawfare, or the abuse of the law to politically persecute someone. These accusations have a clear objective: to end President Lula's political life and to prevent him from running for president in this year's election.
The lawyer also criticized the Supreme Federal Court's decision to deny Lula his right to fight the 12-year sentence while remaining free. He called it a violation of the federal constitution and the Brazilian law. He added that he will use every judicial option to prove Lula's innocence and bring him back to the political scene. Meanwhile, in Curitiba, south of Brazil, people have rallied outside the federal police headquarters where Lula is being detained. Thousands of Lula supporters have been camping outside the jail since Saturday night, when he started serving his sentence for alleged corruption. Demonstrators insist he's innocent and say they won't leave until he's freed. Busloads of supporters are reportedly on their way from different parts of the country, and several artists and performers have joined the protest as well. Our correspondent Andre Vieira brings us the latest from the campsite outside the police headquarters in Curitiba.
Olá We're here at the Lula Libre, or Free Lula camp, where thousands of people from different parts of Brazil are here to be close to Lula da Silva and to build this resistance movement, a movement that wants to tell the world that Lula has gone from being the subject of political persecution to being a political prisoner, the first political prisoner in Brazil since the end of the military dictatorship. The second Free Lula rally is just starting. Various social movements are taking part, along with different political parties. Lula's former foreign minister, Celso Amorim, is here. So is the leader of the landless movement, João Pedro Stedele, and other leaders of social movements and unions like the oil workers. Feminist organizations and the LGBT movement are here for this demonstration in solidarity with Lula da Silva and in defense of democracy here in Brazil. Today, the executive of the Workers' Party also met and decided to organize this Wednesday throughout the country and across the world too, a world act in solidarity with Lula. We'll be here covering minute by minute this movement of resistance by the Brazilian people and their leader, Lula da Silva.
Ecuador's Interior Minister Cesar Navas says there are no negotiations underway for the release of the 3 journalists kidnapped on the Colombian border.
In a press conference with international media, Interior Minister Cesar Navas gave an update on the situation with regard to insurgent activity on Ecuador's northern border. During his remarks, he clarified the situation of the 3 kidnapped journalists who were abducted on March 26.
We are not negotiating. It is clear that we are analyzing the 4 different scenarios, but we can't tell you about them. What we can confirm is that the government is using every resource for our 3 citizens to get back to their homes soon.
During the meeting, Foreign Minister Maria Fernanda Espinosa also spoke about the situation on the border and bilateral agreements between Colombia and Ecuador.
We can't be so radical. There has been a Colombian reaction and they have helped us, not in the way we expect yet, but we will keep a friendly but firm relationship.
However, despite these official announcements, protesters gathered outside the presidential palace to demand information on the whereabouts of paramilitary kidnapping victims.
We are peaceful people. We live in the border. We need to bring back the kidnapped people. But what we must do is for peace and for San Lorenzo.
The families and friends of abductees will continue to organize demonstrations and others events pushing for the release of their loved ones, as well as the inhabitants of the borders area who demand increased security measures. Denise Herrera, teleSUR, Quito, Ecuador.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. In Peru, the indigenous people and the civil society forums are taking place ahead of the Summit of the Americas. Corruption is one of the key issues on the agenda, and it is a major threat for both the indigenous people and societies. The Civil Society Forum is asking the heads of state to take proper measures against corruption. The Forum of the Indigenous People will also analyze the effect of mining companies on indigenous land and the role of women. And still in Peru, the country's media has been mounting a campaign against Venezuela over the past weeks. Its sights are set on Nicolás Maduro's likely attendance at the upcoming Summit of the Americas taking place in Lima.
No hay medicinas, no hay comida, hay que cerrar colas hasta...
Almost all Peruvian media depicts Venezuela like this: a version where the government is the only guilty player for Venezuela's crisis, and Nicolás Maduro is shown as a dictator. In contrast, they show Honduras, Mexico, Colombia, and of course the US as applying democracy.
El señor Temer es bienvenido.
Mr. Temer is welcome. Mr. Macri doesn't have money in tax havens, and Mr. Santos' ruling is an example of democracy. That's how they show things in Peru. That's our media. That's what they tell people.
Preside una democracia ejemplar que es Colombia.
For Bejar, Peruvian media is being manipulated and serving economic and political interests.
Siempre fue un rol ultraderechista.
He works for the right. They are very basic when talking about the current events of Latin America, and they don't even like to talk about Peru's sovereignty.
Over the last weeks, the so-called big media networks only focus on the position of the Lima Group against Venezuela. Carlos Romambele says this as a specific goal.
Es una nueva arremetida feroz contra Venezuela.
This is just a media campaign against Venezuela to impose views against its government and to make people think that Venezuelans are living in a humanitarian crisis. That is totally false. The ones who really follow the process know that there are problems, but that those are caused by an economic war imposed by the empire's geopolitical interest in the region.
The White House, with the help of the Lima Group and media networks, has tried to impose a distorted version of Venezuela's situation to justify future intervention. That announcement may happen at the coming 8th Summit of the Americas.
Representatives from Venezuela's National Constituent Assembly are opening up a discussion on various issues relating to same-sex marriage and abortion. Freddie Gillingham caught up with a youth collective in Caracas to find out why they thought this is important for the country.
Abortion remains illegal in Venezuelan law. However, the controversial topic has now been made a top priority for the women chapter of the ANC, which recently announced they would begin opening a space up in the assembly for it to be discussed. At Caracas's Cultural Centre, news that the topic of abortion will take centre stage in the ANC was met with hope, as members from a youth collective discussed the various measures.
In the process of finding out the information on how to do an abortion, everything has to be like buried under the table because obviously it is not new. So you can't just reveal to anybody that you have had an abortion, and that obviously makes women feel a certain type of way because if you can't talk about a personal experience because you're gonna get penalized for it, then that.
It's not just abortion that's on the table. Same-sex marriage and the legal recognition of same-sex couples are also being placed as a topic of discussion.
Well, it is important to start the discussion about such a topic because we are creating a new constitution. This constitution would be the development of laws getting fixed in between the social fabric that is being changed due to this Bolivarian process of revolution.
As governments across Latin America swing to the right, these issues become more relevant than ever in political discussion. Freddie Gillingham, teleSUR, Caracas.
In Argentina, Congress will discuss on Tuesday the legalization of abortion. A new bill proposes that women should have access to a termination up to 14 weeks when the mother's life is at risk or if the pregnancy is the result of a rape. At least 1,000 experts will give evidence and the discussion will continue until May. Feminist organizations and pro-life campaigners have protested during the last few months to influence the vote on the bill. Mexico's 4 main presidential candidates gathered at the American Chamber of Commerce in Mexico on Monday to discuss business issues. The candidates attended the Chamber's 101st General Assembly. The negotiations for the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, dominated much of the discussion. The candidates highlighted themes of respect, free trade, and dignity. The leftist frontrunner Andrés Manuel López Obrador called for mutual respect between Mexico and the U.S.
Our country, our people does not deserve a discriminatory treatment. The bilateral relationship between the Mexican government and the U.S. government should be based on mutual respect and cooperation for development.
According to latest polls, Ricardo Anaya, who leads a right-left coalition, is running 11 points behind López Obrador. Anaya says trade should remain free and open, but that NAFTA should be modernized.
I think the best scenario would be for there not to be restrictions, no new tariffs, and for us to have a free and just commerce. I think that would be the best thing for both nations.
In Colombia, human rights activist Piedad Córdoba has announced her withdrawal from the presidential race due to family reasons. In a press conference, she announced that the reason for her withdrawal is her mother's delicate health. She also said this does not mean she will retire from politics, since it's her passion. The 63-year-old pledged to continue to fight for peace in Colombia. In El Salvador, the construction company Phoenix is going ahead with the building project that threatens the cultural heritage and environment in Naulingo.
Gathered in front of the court of Naulingo, these environmentalists, indigenous people, and members of local communities are demanding a stop to harmful construction work.
Why does the company, having received a court order to not destroy the archaeological site, keep working? Other than them destroying the site, they will also harm the river, which is of vital importance to us.
Alleged employees of the construction company also attended the court, fighting with protesters, saying they were now out of a job. The Phoenix Construction Company has been advised by the Ministry of the Environment and the Secretary of Culture to terminate the construction for not having the correct permits.
The same Ministry of the Environment sent a letter to this construction company telling them to stop the construction. What they are doing isn't in accordance with the environmental law. Nonetheless, the order was not adhered to. That is why we turned to the Attorney General's office.
The construction of the housing complex is in danger of destroying the Tacuzcalco ceremonial site, declared a National Heritage Site in 1997.
They're invading our cultural places, our sacred places. But more than that, they are destroying our only home, which are not just these houses, because I can sleep under a tree, but it is our Mother Earth, the Mother Earth that God created.
The inhabitants also denounced the contamination of the Ceniza River that supplies water to 11 communities. The sugarcane industry has also been affected due to toxic waste. The damage will increase further under the effect of wastewater discharged from the housing complex.
There are various factors that have contaminated the Ceniza River over time, but that is not a valid argument for any company to come and say that since the river is already contaminated, they can keep on contaminating it.
The Peace Court of Naulingo thought this would pass to a pretrial case, but it turned out that to stop the work, the Secretary of Culture must order the suspension of the project owing to damage of the National Heritage Site.
A water shortage is affecting parts of Panama, and people are blaming the National Sewage Institute for bad management. Allegedly, they are looking to privatize this service.
Residents of a zone outside Panama City are protesting in front of the National Aqueduct and Sewage Institute. They haven't had drinking water access for more than 3 months.
It's a natural resource that can't be denied to people. It is a basic right. No one can live without water, so they are violating our right to live.
According to data of the National University, around 500,000 people don't have drinking water access. This affects the most vulnerable sectors in the country.
Us, the poorest, are the ones who lack water in spite of living in Panama, one of the countries with the biggest reserves in the world. bad administration and lack of interest by the authorities in what they call marginal sectors is the cause.
Because of the distribution system problems and bad administration, they try to justify privatization of the service.
They want to put it into private hands as part of capitalist and neoliberal policies. They want to turn human rights into business, so we must fight to maintain free access to water for everyone.
The move threatens to prioritize profit, making the gap between poor and rich even wider.
teleSUR, Ciudad de Panamá. We'll take another short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia team reports. Welcome back. Tension between the United States and Russia has escalated over claims that dozens of people died in a chemical attack on Saturday in the Syrian town of Douma. The UN Security Council has held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Syria. Many Western countries said a toxic gas was used and that the Syrian government, backed by Russia, was responsible. But the Russians say they have not found any trace of chemical weapons use in Douma. The United States, along with allies like France and Britain, are threatening a forceful response with or without the backing of the UN.
Our military radiological, biological, chemical unit was on site of an alleged chemical accident, and it confirmed that there was no chemical substances found on the ground. There were no dead bodies found. There were no poisoned people in the hospitals. The doctors in Douma denied that that there were people who came to the hospital claiming that they were under the chemical attack.
We're going to make a decision tonight or very shortly thereafter, and you'll be hearing the decision. But we can't let atrocities like we all witnessed, and you can see that, and it's horrible. We can't let that happen. In our world, we can't let that happen.
And now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
World leaders have met at the Boao Forum for Asia in China. The annual summit is a platform to discuss the economic issues among the member countries. Many leaders spoke against trade disputes amid rising tensions between China and the United States. China's President Xi Jinping said all countries should be treated as equals and respect each other's social systems.
No country should practice hegemony, pursue power politics benefiting oneself at the expense of others, or bully the weak. We should properly manage and control differences in order to achieve lasting peace.
Yulia Skripal, the daughter of former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal, has been discharged from Salisbury District Hospital in UK. The duo were allegedly poisoned with a nerve agent last month in Salisbury. Sergei Skripal's condition has been also reported to be stable. The UK accused Russia of poisoning without substantial evidence. Russia has denied any involvement. The FBI have raided the office, home and hotel room of Donald Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, in New York. Cohen has been in questions regarding a payment to adult movie actor who allegedly had a relationship with Donald Trump in 2006. It is believed the raid was conducted following a referral by Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who is investigating Trump's 2016 election campaign links with Russia.
Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is in Washington to testify before U.S. senators on the data breach scandal. He's expected to face tough questions. Facebook is in the middle of a controversy after millions of users' data was exposed to the British data mining firm Cambridge Analytica. On Monday, Zuckerberg issued a statement apologizing and taking the responsibility for the privacy abuse. And with this, we've come to the end of this news brief. But this and other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.